What do you know is true without evidence? What are you certain of? Right down to your bones. Without proof. Back when I was 10, there was a competition for schoolkids to write a treatment for an episode of Doctor Who, with the best one being developed into an full episode in the next series and the winner receiving a writing credit. I was a huge fan of DW at the time, and the competition was actually run through schools. So my teacher made the entire class do it. But I was very excited. I began writing a story about the Doctor landing on a planet full of defective Cybermen, whose programming had gone awry and had been left on this asylum planet to rot. The Doctor lands there in response to a mysterious distress call from a woman and attempts to find and save her while avoiding the dangerous dysfunctional Cybermen and the looming threat of planetary destruction at the hands of the normal Cybermen. I finished my short treatment and gave it to my teacher to submit. Unfortunately, it turned out the competition was very strict about the formatting of submissions, and mine was returned because I had used the wrong formatting in some way. It seemed like a weird reason. I was a bit disappointed, and that was the end of that. But then, a year or two later, there was an episode of DW called Asylum of the Daleks, which seemed incredibly similar to my story except with Daleks. So incredibly, eerily similar in fact, that to this day I am absolutely convinced that Stephen Moffat saw my script and came up with a formatting excuse so that he could remove me from the competition, steal my story, change the bad guys and claim it as his own. I have zero evidence. I don't even still have the treatment I wrote, or any letter from the BBC about my submission. And yet I know in my bones that Stephen Moffat stole his script from 10-year-old me. Back when I was 18, I got my first tattoo, the Squaresoft logo on my upper arm. It was 2001 and I was also on my own in a new state. I was and still am a huge RPG fan, and it's the height of my geekdom. Well, I sent in a picture of me and my tattoo with a short letter about me and my favorite games to official PlayStation magazine. They published my letter and photo along with the caption, "We don't know whether to be impressed or frightened." The very next month they started a Tattoo of the Month section, and I am absolutely sure 100% that I either started that or was the story that proved the concept. The test, unless someone can come from that team's time and tell me I'm not. I'll always believe I was the start of that. Edit. Here is a current pic of the tat. I looked for several hours to try and find the original that I sent in. I thought I had it saved, but I guess it's lost forever. Sorry everyone. The Truman Show was made to make me think the entire world watching my every move was a ridiculous notion. But I know better. That the key to happiness is low expectations. That my cousin stole my holographic first edition Charizard Pokémon card back in the early 2000s. My brother deleted my game save on purpose. He was old enough to read. He knew what he was doing. I know for certain that the comments on this post would look different on Facebook. That my last boss secretly hated me even though we had, on the surface, a very positive relationship. My ex-boss used COVID as an excuse to make me redundant because I was the only member of his team to be hired by someone else and not him. Frick that guy forever. For every sock that goes missing, a Tupperware lid appears. My cat knocked over the water glass on purpose. Casey Anthony killed her daughter and her parents know it too. Edit. Thanks for the 2 rewards everyone. I've never gotten them before now, smiling face. There's a travel agency that's been around in my town for as long as I can remember. I wholeheartedly believe it's a front for the mob. We're all too in over our heads. Getting a name tattooed on your body is a curse both on you and the person whose name is on you for as long as you wear it. That a lot more famous actors than we realize are secretly the children of other famous actors from the previous generation. I call it the Hollywood bastard theory. If I'm stuck in traffic and switch lanes because the other lane looks like it will move faster, the lane I just switched from will automatically go faster. My cat is in a constant superposition of having recently eaten and being starved to death. At least, that's how she acts. Also, any of my feelings about myself can't contradict or disprove those no matter how hard you try. Not that it is something I believe to be true, but something that I often think about is the butterfly effect. Like little things I do during the day could affect the total outcome of my day. The world is not ready for a bald Messi. George R.R. Martin will never finish the last Game of Thrones book. Burger King hash browns are just tater tots. I watched Flight 93 go down. I would never share that in real life because it's frickin' grim and no one would believe you. The geography of the reports are off. I saw it clear as day from Kent State's main campus, Ohio. I didn't know what I was seeing other than I remember thinking, that plane is way too low. We had a aviation college so planes were common, and too big and it's jerking around like how a toddler drives a Power Wheels truck. Continued on to class. You don't wanna be late even at a liberal college. That I have felt love. I am really not sure if this is what others have felt and called love, but if it is not, I don't know what is. 1 in every 3 or 4 people is not capable of critical thinking. And I'm not making some kind of point about politics or anything. I mean those people are literally incapable of taking in information and synthesizing it with other information and coming to their own conclusions. They're basically robots programmed by whatever source is most convincing to them. McDonald's Coke hits different than any Coke I've ever had. Edit. Thanks for the awards, kind strangers. Let's get a Coke sometime. That being sick with a bacterial infection as an infant and almost dying is the reason why I am never sick despite being a super unhealthy person. I saw a massive bee when I was younger, and when I tell someone they never believe me. Most of this is just busy work. Flat earthers are just doing it for attention. They really don't think the earth is flat. I'm really freaking lucky, but like in a subtle way, like if there's a 95% chance I'll get hurt doing something stupid, I'll come out unscathed. Sometimes I think there's a guardian angel watching over me, making sure I don't kill myself by being an idiot. Dogs go to doggy heaven. As an Asian, I can safely say without a doubt that you don't need cups to measure the water when cooking rice. Teddy Roosevelt cured his childhood asthma by sheer force of will. That alien life forms will be nothing like we have ever imagined. Edit. This comment has gotten kind of popular. Thanks for all your comments. This had made me realize how little we truly know about the universe. A lot of the comments here have made me start Googling new topics, and that has led me to a YouTube video that summarizes what I am trying to say much more eloquently and intelligently. https://www.youtube.com watch v = y584 ajzmqy. That Andy Dufresne was guilty in The Shawshank Redemption. It's never actually proven that he didn't kill his wife and her lover. We just have his word and a story made up by an inmate that wanted to be liked by Andy and his friends. Also, what are the chances that his wife and lover were murdered the same night that Andy was going to kill them himself? Before he changed his mind. Good music makes life worth living. Y'all. The question says without evidence. Gut bacterial imbalance can change a person fundamentally, physically, mentally, emotionally. One day they're going to cure some impossibly vexing diseases and conditions when they figure out that it's all connected to what lives in your guts. Life exists outside of Earth. I can't imagine a universe where we are the only life. My sister ate the whole ice cream box without asking my parents. Edit. I'm sorry to disappoint you guys, but she didn't leave any ice cream. I don't know what happened to the box. I'm quietly convinced I made a best-selling mystery novelist change the way he writes because I criticized him on Reddit. The novelist in question is Chris Carter. The books are the Robert Hunter series. Yes, the guy who has built a career on looking for serial killers is named Hunter. He works for the LAPD's ultra-violent crime unit. It's not a series that's overburdened by subtlety, is what I'm saying. They are as schlocky a bunch of thrillers as you could ever hope to find. But for some reason I can't get enough of them, despite the fact that they're very much not great. They lean pretty damn heavy on ridiculous tropes. And I've never seen a more Mary Sue lead than I have in this series. But the biggest complaint I have with them is that the same line appears almost literally word for word in the first 9 books. I made a comment about it on Reddit on an R-Books thread about your favorite terrible authors, and I went back through all of the books published so far just to prove my point. The Crucifix Killer. The famous line doesn't actually appear in this book as far as I could find. but Hunter does drink scotch near constantly as the defining trait of his character. Across the room a stylish glass bar looked totally out of place. It was the only piece of furniture Hunter had purchased brand new and from a trendy shop. It held several bottles of Hunter's biggest passion, single malt Scotch whiskey. The bottles were arranged in a peculiar way that only he understood. And so it begins. The Executioner. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion, but unlike most people, he knew how to appreciate it instead of simply getting drunk on it. Note that in this one and the next Carter doesn't even use the Scottish spelling. Whiskey, rather than whiskey, despite the fact that this is literally Hunter's only character trait. The Night Stalker. Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey, but unlike most, he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. Single quote. The Death Sculptor. Hunter sat at the bar and ordered a double dose of 12-year-old Glendronach with 2 cubes of ice. Single malt Scotch whiskey was his biggest passion, and though he had overdone it a few times he knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality instead of simply getting drunk on it. Single quote. The Hunter. Hunter's father had a passion for single malt Scotch whiskey, a passion that, frankly, Hunter had never understood. He found whiskey, any type of whiskey, way too overwhelming for his palate. Single quote. I actually quite like this one. It's a prequel novella, so this one is a nice little meta throwback. It gets a pass from me. One by one. Hunter would never consider himself an expert, but he knew how to appreciate the flavor and robustness of single malts, instead of simply getting hammered on them. Though, sometimes, getting hammered worked just fine. This is also the first appearance of the "but sometimes getting drunk works just fine. Am I right?" addendum. It's nice to see Carter branching out a little, but after this he never looks back. An Evil Mind. Single malt Scotch whiskey was Hunter's biggest passion. Unlike so many, he knew how to appreciate its palate instead of just getting drunk on it. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. Single quote. I am death. Back in the living room, wrapped in a white towel, Hunter switched on a floor lamp and dimmed its intensity to medium. That done, he approached his drinks cabinet, which was small but held an impressive collection of single malt Scotch whiskey, which was probably his biggest passion. Though he had overdone it a few times, Hunter sure knew how to appreciate the flavor and quality of a good single malt, instead of simply getting drunk on it. Single quote. The Caller. Hunter's biggest passion was single malt Scotch whiskey. Back in his apartment, tucked in a corner of his living room, an old-fashioned drinks cabinet held a small but impressive collection of single malts that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. Hunter would never consider himself an expert on whiskey, but, unlike so many, he at least knew how to appreciate its flavor and quality, instead of simply getting drunk on it. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. The Caller also gets double points for helpfully informing us that women just don't get the subtle nuances of Scotch. Hunter tried not to frown at her again, but he was sincerely intrigued. Women in general weren't very fond of Scotch whiskey, which wasn't at all surprising. Whiskey was undoubtedly an acquired taste, one that at first would certainly overpower anyone's palate and knock the air out of their lungs in the process. Hunter knew that only too well. The trick was to persist, to keep trying, to keep sipping it until one day it finally made sense. Women usually weren't that patient with drinks. They either liked it at first sip or they didn't. This, by the by, is how we know that the woman in question is trustworthy. Because reasons. Gallery of the Dead. Back in his apartment, Hunter had a small but impressive collection of Scotch that would probably satisfy the palate of most connoisseurs. He would never consider himself an expert, but unlike so many of his friends, who also claimed to enjoy single malt Scotch whiskey, he knew how to appreciate the flavors and robustness of the malts, instead of simply getting drunk on them. Though sometimes getting drunk worked just fine. Single quote. That post was made in January of 2019. In April, his book Hunting Evil came out, and the line was nowhere to be seen. I didn't think much of it until his new book, Written in Blood, came out a few days ago, and also didn't have the line in it. This comment is also one of the top answers if you Google his name and the book series via Reddit, exactly what you'd do if you were looking to see if people on the internet were talking about your books. I also can't find any evidence of anyone else pointing this out in a review or such like. So yeah, in short, 3 months after I made that comment, he broke the habit of a decade of writing and finally decided that after 9 stories that used this as a crutch for Hunter's personality, it was too much. I know you're reading this, Chris. I know. There is some Godzilla crap at the bottom of our oceans. Deep-sea gigantism will not fail me. Since the Manhattan Project, building of the nuke during World War II by a small group of scientists with unlimited resources. Governments, billionaires got spooked, and science, with a capital S, is no longer a free market of ideas, where any good idea can get pursued. Instead, scientists are very carefully guided towards projects with the funding model that is quite perverse. Source: am a public-funded scientist who's published in Cell. Still no real evidence for this though. That 1 to 2 generations down the line, our use of technology will lead to extreme mental health issues. My brain feels deep-fried from time to time, and I haven't seriously started using a smartphone before I was already an adult. I am essentially a good, decent person. I may not act this out successfully. It's the fact that I keep trying to act it out relentlessly that makes it true. That actual, proper snuff films exist. There's too much depravity and perversion in the world for that not to be the case. I exist, and if it really is all the Matrix, I don't have any bones anyway. Blue pill please. That the funeral home by my house is run by some sort of criminal organization. I always see the same gangster-looking guys hanging out in front of it smoking cigars and drinking beers. Deja vu comes from previous dreams. Trump never intended to actually win. Caillou is a freaking bee.